All right, so I know we're looking at Psalm 140 today, but I'd like us to think about Acts 16 just for a minute as we get ready to look at Psalm 140. And so there's this moment in Paul's missionary journeys where he's in Philippi, and he is followed by a woman with a lot of power who makes a lot of money for her owners. There's really no sweet way to say it. She's owned and she's a money maker. And so she is demon possessed. She's following Paul around and harassing them. And so at one point, Paul finally gets tired of her harassment, turns around and rebukes the spirit in her, and it leaves. And so these people, these owners of this woman, are using her to make money, and they realize that their cash cow, their money-making system is gone. And so there's just this big mess in this town of Philippi, and there's a large crowd, and there's accusations that are made, and the magistrates get involved. There's riots. I mean, it's just a wild story. And so Paul ends up being accused of some charges. He's beaten and flogged and thrown into prison, in the inner prison, and put in stocks. So he and Silas are there, and well, let's just say that's bad. That's a lot of heat. That's a lot of trouble in their life from an enemy, from an outside source. And so I take us to Psalm 140, which really is a psalm by David that he is under attack. So similar to what Paul is going through in Acts 16, David is in trouble, and he's calling for help. Just a little taste of Psalm 140. Rescue me, Lord, from evildoers. Protect me from the violent, who devise evil plans in their hearts and stir up war every day. They make their tongues as sharp as serpents. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Keep me safe, Lord, from the hands of the wicked. And so you get a sense that David's in big trouble, and he's being attacked, and he's calling on the Lord. So listen, none of us in our framework in the United States of America have any kind of Christian persecution at all. There's no one who's out to attack us. We have relational issues. We have things that we go through where we have people who don't like us, but really we don't experience any level of any kind of persecution or attack or trouble. And so we're only remotely connected to this psalm, but we can sure be connected to the idea that trouble comes in our lives from outward sources, and how we move through it is so critical. And so David spends the whole chapter asking for God to work. And he lands on the idea that God is, he says, I say to the Lord, you are my God, hear my cry for mercy. Sovereign Lord, my strong deliverer, you shield me, my head in the day of battle. And so he's asking God for help. And then he lands in verse 12 at the end of the chapter. I know that the Lord secures justice for the poor and upholds the cause of the needy. Surely the righteous will praise your name, and the upright will live in your presence. And so David calls for help, and he gets to this place where he trusts in God in his attacks. In the face of enemies who are coming after him, he comes and lands in this idea that God is just, and he upholds the needy, and he cares for his own, and the righteous will praise his name. And so we go back to the Paul story in Acts chapter 16, and so what happens? So Paul and Silas, in the midst of their trouble, in the midst of their attacks, living out the gospel and proclaiming the gospel and living out the kingdom, and they're thrown in jail after beaten and flogged and tore up, and there they are late at night. And what do? They sing and pray in prison. And you may know the story. There's an earthquake and their stocks fall off, and the jailer who's in charge of the prison comes running in, and he thinks everyone has fled. And Paul yells out and says, don't kill yourself. So he's going to take his life. He thinks his life is over anyways because he failed as a prison guard. And he says, don't kill yourself, we're all here. And Paul and Silas help this man know Jesus Christ and the gospel. And he and his whole family are saved and are baptized. Now, I just want to think about what would have happened if Paul missed that moment. Like, again, troubles are hard and attacks we don't want to go through. But if we grumble our way through or just focus on woe is me or my life is miserable and give up, I mean, what happens in those moments? We become focused on ourselves and not what God is doing. And so Paul and Silas are praising God. God is at work behind the scenes in the situation. And because of it, this man and his family come to Christ, and they are baptized and are followers of Jesus. Man, that's amazing. And so I just want to ask you, as heat comes into your life, as your situations are sometimes terrible and messed up, and you're being attacked, or at least you feel like you're being attacked, I just wonder where you move. If you're like Psalm 140, if you move towards asking God for help, which I'm sure Paul and Silas did, but if you're moving towards this confidence in a sovereign God who's at work all around you and you trust him, I just wonder if you focus in on your own grumbling and your own loss, and if you miss what God is doing in those moments. And so I want to encourage you as the people of God, as you think about this psalm and how it ends, and you think about Paul's story and how he lands in this place of trust, and he sees what God's doing, and he's in the right framework, and he has an impact for the sake of the gospel. Listen, we can't miss what God's doing, even though we're attacked and trouble's coming. We've got to keep our eyes on Jesus to know that he's at work and he will rescue, and we can trust him. So think about those words today. Read Psalm 140, maybe read Acts 16 to refresh your memory on that story. And I hope that it helps you when the trouble comes, that you trust God and you see that he's working behind the scenes. Take care. We'll see you again.